This episode of the CyberWire is made possible in part by CrowdSec. CrowdSec helps rebalance the asymmetrical cybersecurity industry by making their open-source multiplayer firewall available to all for free. Once threats are identified, all users are notified to ensure everyone's protection. No matter what your business size, CrowdSec offers adaptive response to credential stuffing, port scans, password brute forcing, and much more. At CrowdSec, they have each other's backs and make the internet safer together. Visit crowdsec.net to learn more. A phishing campaign impersonates DHL. Conscription and mobilization provide criminals with phishbait for Russian victims. Norton LifeLock advises customers that their accounts may have been compromised. Trends in data protection. Veracode's report on the state of software application security. Ben Yelin looks at NSO Group's attempt at state sovereignty. Ann Johnson from Afternoon Cyber Tea speaks with Microsoft's Chris Young about the importance of the security ecosystem. And Ukraine calls for a digital United Nations. From the CyberWire studios at Data Tribe, I'm Dave Bittner with your CyberWire summary for Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. Happy Tuesday, everyone. Good to have you along with us here again today. ArmorBlox describes a phishing campaign that's using phony shipping invoices that purport to come from DHL. The campaign targeted an organization in the education sector with more than 100,000 emails. The fishhook in the email is contained in an Excel document which, when opened, will display a blurred-out preview of an invoice. The user will then be asked to enter their Microsoft account login credentials in order to view the invoice. The researchers note that the emails were able to bypass email security filters since they don't contain any malicious links. The general approach is familiar. First, impersonate a well-known and trusted brand using a convincing copy of that brand's logo and other branding elements. Second, use a single, simple call to action that's likely to involve something the recipient will care about: payment issues, account suspension, or in this case, getting that parcel you were expecting. It's easy, as the world watches Russia's hybrid war in Ukraine, and in the narrower cyber phases of that war, to see the contribution criminal gangs are making as auxiliaries of Russia's intelligence and security services, to forget that more ordinary cybercrime persists. And moreover, Russians themselves can also be its victim. TASS reports, citing information provided by Kaspersky, that criminals are using Russian mobilization and conscription plans as an occasion for social engineering attacks against Russian victims. The goal appears to be theft of Telegram accounts. The report states, scammers steal Telegram user accounts using a phishing mailing list with an offer to get acquainted with a fake list of people who will allegedly be sent for mobilization on February 1st through the 3rd, 2023, the channel specifies. If the mark follows the link, they'll be directed to a Credential theft site. As Medusa's coverage in its English language edition suggests, the emotions being exploited are anxiety, worry, and fear. The phishing messages promise to send you to a site that will let you know whether you or a loved one is on the list of those scheduled to be summoned for military service next month. Norton LifeLock's corporate parent Gen Digital has warned some customers that their accounts may have been compromised. Bleeping Computer quotes Gen Digital's letter to customers as saying, "Our own systems were not compromised. However, we strongly believe that an unauthorized third party knows and has utilized your username and password for your account." The incident appears to have been the result of a credential stuffing campaign detected in mid-December when an unusually large volume of failed logins were detected on the 12th. Norton LifeLock warns, In accessing your account with your username and password, the unauthorized third party may have viewed your first name, last name, phone number, and mailing address. In a Saturday update provided to Bleeping Computer, Gen Digital said it was alerting customers to suspicious login attempts and helping them secure their accounts, stating, Gen's family of brands offers products and services to approximately 500 million users. We have secured 925,000 inactive and active accounts that may have been targeted by credential stuffing attacks. This is the second incident involving identity and access management services to come to light this month, the first being issues affecting LastPass users. The benefits of using a password manager remain, but they're not a panacea, and they have to be used with proper care. Secure backup and recovery provider Veeam released their 2023 Data Protection Trends Report this morning, which surveyed 4,200 IT professionals on data protection drivers, challenges, and strategies. Hybrid IT remains common, balancing physical servers in data centers and cloud-hosted servers. Ransomware has been a pervasive issue that will continue steadily into 2023, and increasingly, data security is cloud security. Cloud dependence continues to grow, with 80% anticipating the use of backup as a service or disaster recovery as a service for server protection over the next 2 years. Researchers at Orca Security discovered 4 server-side request forgery vulnerabilities affecting Microsoft Azure instances, 2 of which could be exploited without authentication. Microsoft has since patched the flaws. The affected services were Azure API Management, Azure Functions, Azure Machine Learning, and Azure Digital Twins. All 4 of the flaws were non-blind SSRF vulnerabilities, which could allow an attacker to scan local ports, find new services, endpoints, and files, providing valuable information on possibly vulnerable servers and services to exploit for initial entry and the location of potential information to target. Veracode has published a report on software application security, finding that 69% of applications have at least one OWASP top 10 flaw. Around 4 out of 5 programs written in .NET and Java have at least one flaw, while just over half of JavaScript applications contain a flaw. Finally, Ukraine is calling for the formation of a digital United Nations. Yuri Shchiol, who leads Ukraine's State Service of Special Communications and Information Protection, told Politico, "We need the Cyber United Nations, nations united in cyberspace in order to protect ourselves, effectively protect our world for the future, the cyber world, and our real conventional world. What we really need in this situation is a hub or a venue where we can exchange information, support each other, and interact." The goal of such an organization would be international threat information sharing and preparation to withstand cyber attacks. The metaphor is probably wayward. The United Nations, after all, seeks to include all states, and the proposed organization would of necessity leave those who are bad actors out. And make no mistake about it, Russia, Ukraine is looking at you, and so are the members of NATO and any number of other countries. The proposal really represents a gesture in the direction of an alliance than it does a comprehensive global association. In any case, international threats would seem to call for some form of international cooperative defense. Coming up after the break, Ben Yelin looks at NSO Group's attempt at state sovereignty. Ann Johnson from Afternoon Cyber Tea speaks with Microsoft's Chris Young about the importance of the security ecosystem. Stay with us. And now, a word from our sponsor, Strata. With multi-cloud, your apps and identities are distributed, making them hard to manage and secure. Strata takes all of your existing identity systems, integrates them into an identity fabric, a universal way for all your IDPs to work together. Never refactor your apps again. Never get locked into your IDP with one-to-one connectors. identity orchestration helps you solve your biggest IAM problems, even the messy ones you thought were unsolvable. Bring Strata any IAM use case, like modernizing legacy apps to use passwordless authentication, hot switching between IDPs, or enabling identity operation resiliency. Strata's flexible, lightweight, and distributed architecture software is designed to extend the value of your identity infrastructure, no matter the complexity or scale. Share your time on a discovery call, and Strata will send you custom AirPods Pro. The multi-cloud identity wave is here, and you can ride it with Strata. Ready to learn more? Visit strata.io/cyberwire. That's strata.io/cyberwire. And we thank Strata Identity for sponsoring our show. And now, a word from our sponsor, SpyCloud, the cybercrime analytics leader. SpyCloud disrupts cybercrime by telling you what criminals know about your business and your customers, so you can take action to prevent ransomware, account takeover, and online fraud. SpyCloud constantly recaptures and analyzes new data from the criminal underground, including credentials, cookies, and PII siphoned from malware-infected devices. With knowledge of the specific data criminals have in hand from InfoStealer malware on managed and unmanaged devices, security teams can respond with a more efficient and effective process called post-infection remediation. Get SpyCloud's post-infection remediation guide outlining the 7 steps for preventing a malware infection from becoming a full-blown ransomware incident. Visit spycloud.com/cyberwire. That's spycloud.com/cyberwire. And we thank SpyCloud for sponsoring our show. Microsoft's Ann Johnson is host of the Afternoon Cyber Tea podcast. And on a recent episode, she spoke with Microsoft's Chris Young about the importance of the security ecosystem. Here's part of that conversation.
Speaking of partnerships, let's go to our core job, what you and I do daily. So you have this really large remit where you think about business development, you're thinking about the company's strategy all up, and of course you lead, the ventures team with Michelle Gonzalez. But I want to focus for just a minute about ecosystem and why you think ecosystem is important, even for a company like Microsoft. And why do you think it's so important for the security ecosystem to exist and help our customers and our partners?
No company can solve all the problems themselves. Number one, I think, and that's true in any space, I think it's especially true in security. Like nobody's got 100% of the solution, partially just because, security is a living, breathing problem. It changes all the time. It changes faster, I'd argue, than other elements of the technology landscape. And that's one of the reasons why ecosystem work is super critical to security. Because as much as we can do at Microsoft, we have a lot of great products and a lot of great solutions that we apply to helping our customers solve some of their thorniest cyber challenges. We don't cover the entire landscape, every use case, every platform, every threat mitigation technique. And so ecosystems are critically important because there are a lot of great companies out there that can help us cover the use cases that are most important to our customers. And therefore, the ecosystem creation and the orchestration of the ecosystem in ways that makes it come together in service of the customer's need, which is ultimately to deliver their business or deliver their outcomes in a secure, efficient, effective way. That's really what's most important. And as you point out, Anne, that's such a huge part of our role inside of Microsoft is to be the orchestrator of these ecosystems, to bring companies together from outside of Microsoft with all the great people here inside of Microsoft who are trying to solve these problems on behalf of our customers, and then to help our customers get the most out of the ecosystems themselves. It's hard, right? Because, we all know some of the classic challenges that people face in cyber, a lot of vendors, a lot of stitched together solutions. Part of our goal in these ecosystem programs is to make it feel more seamless, to take some of the burden off of our customers so they don't have to do all the heavy lifting of bringing together some of the different solutions they need to ultimately solve their problems.
So why is it your view that it's so important to have this vibrant security startup community?
Startups they're the lifeblood, I think, of our industry. I think that's true in broader tech, and it's also true if you double click down into cybersecurity. And the reason is they move us forward. Here's a good example. I talk about this. I talk about this all the time, which is, if I think about just take endpoint security, until companies like Cylance and CrowdStrike came along, a lot of the endpoint security industry was AV signature based. And in today's world, we've all moved on. Why? Because innovation happened. It didn't happen in the big companies. It happened in the startup landscape. Happened to be a bunch of McAfee alums that went out and did it. You could argue about, the outcomes of the companies. Obviously, CrowdStrike has done really well. We don't see Cylance as much anymore. They're part of BlackBerry. But they pushed the industry forward in a unique way, and I think we're all better off for it.
You can hear the rest of this conversation along with all of the episodes of Afternoon Cyber Tea on our website, thecyberwire.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. And joining me once again is Ben Yelin. He's from the University of Maryland Center for Health and Homeland Security and also my co-host over on the Caveat podcast. Welcome back, Ben.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
So article over on the IEEE Spectrum website, and this is about a class action suit that's being brought against GitHub Copilot and their parent company, Microsoft, about these claims that these AI engines are basically pirating open source software. What do you make of this, Ben?
So this is really fascinating. We have an issue here that I think is novel and extremely complicated. So Copilot, as probably most of our listeners would know, is an AI pair programmer for software developers. It suggests code in real time, but the input is, at least as alleged here, copyrighted material. Somebody has actually developed the code that goes into the system that leads to Copilot spitting out suggested code. This is open source software as well. So obviously the vision of open source is that anybody can use it and access it. But there are individuals, and that's the nature of this lawsuit, who think that their own creative work in developing these lines of code is being used without attribution. And eventually, if somebody uses the output from Copilot to make a profit, that's going to be a violation of our intellectual property laws. There's another side to this story, though, and I think that's best articulated by Kit Walsh, a staff attorney at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. And Kit argues that training Copilot on public repositories is fair use. Fair use allows for the analytical use of copyrighted work. So for academic purposes, for learning purposes, the question here is whether this counts as fair use under our intellectual property laws. What Kit is saying is that Copilot is ingesting code and creating associations in its own neural net about what tends to follow and appear in what contexts.
Right.
And that is sort of doing analytical, that's the equivalent of doing analytical work on somebody else's copyright-protected material.
Yeah.
Really, this could boil down to how much Copilot is reproducing from any given iota, any element of the training data that was used as input. And that's something that's somewhat metaphysical. We might not know exactly how much of the suggested code comes from a distinct piece of data that somebody else's copyrighted work. So this is a really complicated issue. I'm not sure we're going to get a satisfying resolution for a long time, but I can understand why people who have poured their heart and mind into developing lines of code would be upset by it being used potentially to profit somebody else without attribution.
Yeah. It strikes me that at the core of this is whether or not an AI system can express creativity. And is it if you're able to input things and it's able to come up with novel solutions based on inspiration from other people's work, to me that's new work, as opposed to just cutting and pasting some lines of code. That seems pretty clear cut to me.
Right.
If you find some code that you had put in your book about programming in whatever language, and the AI takes it and just pastes it in there and doesn't even change any of the variables, well, we've got an issue here. But if the AI is inspired by the code you write, as you say, that's a lot fuzzier in my mind.
And can an AI even be inspired? Is that a thing?
Right.
Because unlike us, you use an example on Caveat where we talked about this as well, of going to an art museum, being inspired by Picasso or whomever, and going home and coming up with your own painting inspired by his work, even though it's unattributed.
Right.
And that's a really interesting metaphor, but in that case, you're using your own creativity. You are using the contents of your own mind to turn the inspiration from somebody else into your own distinct creative work. And is that happening with artificial intelligence? It's a hard question to answer. Can a computer have creativity? Or are they just are they just digesting pieces of information and spitting them out algorithmically? It's something that I don't think is clearly answerable.
Well, I think we all need to go back and watch the Star Trek The Next Generation episode, Measure of a Man, where Lieutenant Commander Data is put on trial as to whether or not, as a computer, he has the rights of a human being. I think it's all pretty well laid out there.
Maybe you and I can turn that into like a one-act play where we just do that scene and we have attorneys on each side arguing the best arguments on behalf of their clients.
Yeah.
I sense that's a good creative work in our future.
Yeah. All right. Well, this one, more to come for sure as this develops, and I find it fascinating. Ben Yelin, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
MISSY is a nonprofit organization formed exclusively to further and promote charitable, educational, and scientific purposes, including furthering innovation in cybersecurity through education, global technology partnerships, investment, and community engagement to create a collaborative network of subject matter experts and cyber professionals. Their Mission Accelerator facilities and programs thrive on finding fresh ideas, technologies, and the people with the passion needed to repurpose current and emerging cyber technologies into capabilities at maximum speed. For information on how you can get involved, please visit missy.tech. And we thank MISSY, the Maryland Innovation and Security Institute, for sponsoring our show. And that's the CyberWire. For links to all of today's stories, check out our daily briefing at thecyberwire.com. The CyberWire podcast is a production of N2K Networks, proudly produced in Maryland out of the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. This episode was produced by Liz Irvin and senior producer Jennifer Iben. Our mixer is Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. The show was written by John Petrick. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie, and I'm Dave Bittner. Thanks for listening. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
Hey everybody, Rick here. If you're anything like me, you hate commercials. So subscribe to CyberWire Pro and get all of our public podcasts ad-free, as well as our exclusive CyberWire Pro podcasts, briefings, articles, events, and bonus content. Designed for the busy professional, CyberWire Pro cuts through the noise and disinformation, giving you access to actionable reporting, trends, analysis, and insight on global events occurring in the industry, all at your fingertips. Subscribe to CyberWire Pro today for only $9.99 a month, or save with an annual subscription for only $99. That is well worth it to get rid of all of those commercials. Visit thecyberwire.com/pro to subscribe today.